Welcome to yet another conversation with inspiring leaders. I'm Marc Pitman, the author of The Surprising Gift of Doubt, which launches, we're celebrating its launch in these 2 days of interviews of really cool people that I would much rather spend my time with than wondering if people are actually there. Just like Denise just dropped out. She'll be right back. So instead of refreshing things on Amazon, I decided to talk to people that I like, and they disappear just like that, and then they reappear, and it seems so like regal the way you reappear.
Magical, magical, mystical, divine.
I feel so inspired just looking at your background. But this is Denise Jacobs. She's the author of Banish Your Inner Critic. Denise, do you happen to have a copy you could pass me?
I do have. I have a copy right here.
Oh, okay.
Right
Could
here.
you give it to me?
You want
Yeah.
it?
Okay. Oh,
Right,
there it
here you
is. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I appreciate that. Could you tell? And she's also the Creative Dose. She's a speaker, author, just an amazing leader in our sector. I was going to say, but multiple sectors. Could you let everyone know where you're calling in from today? Because it looks like there's a halo behind you.
I am calling in from the divine and mystical location of Miami, Florida, where it is always summer, and it is actually a fantastically beautiful day today, about 80 degrees Fahrenheit, and just sunny and blue skies and lovely. This is the time of the year. Is one of the best times of year to live here.
And since the roof is being done in your office space, you get to be at another space where there's the Madonna behind you.
That's right.
Oh, I didn't know if it went with you. I didn't know if that was like something that was a glow that you have.
I wish it did. I feel like I've been doing saintly things lately, so
like a Snapchat filter.
Yeah, I have to say that doing renovations on your house actually should get you anointed to sainthood, because it does require the patience of Job. Yeah, so.
Well, welcome. Thanks for taking a break and getting to chat a little bit about leadership, doubt, and the inner critic. One of the things that we've been, as we work with leaders, doubt seems to be something that wrecks them. Right. And part of it's because I would think probably because we don't have a good opinion of doubt. But what are how do you help people? Well, you kind of broadsided it with the Banish Your Inner Critic, just calling it out. How do you help people make that connection from hiding what they feel like they shouldn't be feeling to actually talking about it with you, or as I've seen in large rooms with hundreds of people?
Right. Well, I think the first thing is that by talking about it, it normalizes it. Right. So it's that, like, actually calling it out. And instead of this kind of culture of shame that is easy to have around doubt, like I'm sure you're very aware of and what you work with, and that people and leaders especially, there's this kind of mythology that you're supposed to know somehow magically, you're supposed to know everything. You're supposed to have all the answers, and you're supposed to be able to solve all the problems. Well, that's just not how things work, right? And so I think, like I said, because there is this mythology and stuff like that, the tendency for people is to, kind of hide and feel ashamed and all this stuff. But as soon as you have an open and honest conversation about it, and that's one of the things that I feel like the exciting thing about my work, and now also the exciting thing about your work, is that saying, hey, this happens. You have doubt, you have an inner critic, you have imposter syndrome. It's so common for leaders. This is how to deal with it. And then as soon as everybody you have, like you experienced it, right? When I did the keynote for the nonprofit storytelling conference, and we did that exercise where everybody wrote down their top fear around like leadership and everything, and put it on a piece of paper and threw it across the room. All of a sudden, it's completely anonymous. It's completely safe. And everybody in the room has those doubts, right?
Well, so part of having been in the audience, what Denise had us do is write down our thing, throw it, and then had somebody else pick it up and read it. And so as you were reading them, you were wondering, was that mine? Because I said that too, but you didn't know. I mean,
Right.
it's, I had a college professor that said the things that are most personal are the things that are most general. When you walk into a
Mm.
room and you feel like everybody's looking at me, they're all judging me. That's generally what everybody else is probably feeling like too. And so if you can speak to that in them, you can
Right.
also fix that in you. So if you can go up to,
Exactly.
hey, Denise, it's good to see you, and just start being the friendly person that you're afraid that everybody else isn't going to be, it
Right.
changes, the transforms the situation. And you
Right.
did that with that room where people were just calling out these crazy, dark fears, especially for the person that wrote it down.
Right.
But you normalized it. It was like, oh, yeah, I get that too.
Right. Right. And I feel like that's the really powerful thing about it. When you realize that the thing that you're most afraid of, or that you're afraid of, is true about yourself, and then you find out that, first of all, it's not that big of it's not that it's not a big deal, but it's not that it's like you're not alone in this
Mm,
fear. And then I think, again, that takes away the power. It normalizes it. It makes you feel like you're not the only one. And then, then I think the second step of it, which is also what I love about what I do, and also what I love about your book and what you do, is that you give tools to deal with it. You give tools to actually work with it and to start to transform it, and so that you can take your power back from it, right?
wow. Yeah, I love that picture of taking your power back. And because then I immediately was thinking in terms of you're not alone. Now that you can take your power back, you can also help somebody else get their power back too.
Exactly.
Wow.
Exactly. Because, and I think too, in taking it's in the process of normalizing it and taking your power back. That is one of the ways that then that makes you stronger. And then that makes you more available and more present to be able to help other people. You can recognize it more easily, right?
Mm.
And then you can be like, okay, been down that road before, or am traveling down that road right now. Here's what I did to help me, and this is what I'm doing right now. Try this, right? And then there's also the kind of the community connection, rapport building that comes from that as well, right? But the seeing and being seen, and it's just a circle of giving and goodness when you do it.
Love that. Well, now this is just a conversation for everybody watching. We haven't scripted any of this, but if you're watching on Amazon Live, be sure to follow, click the follow button, and also buy Denise's book and pre-order mine. The you can, if you're not watching on Amazon Live, you can go to your favorite bookseller and do the same about buying the books. That's totally okay. Just in
Buy
case
the
there are any
books.
firstborns like myself. um, so what happened? How do you work with people that you said you can, going through it yourself, you can identify it sooner? How do you
Mm.
work with people that don't don't want help? I find I
That is
have
an outstanding question. And the
thanks.
interesting thing about it is that most of the people I work with want help,
Isn't it
right?
nice? Yeah.
So it is. Well, I mean, it's nice that people to hire me to do this work, and then I get just to get to show up and do the thing that I'm good at, right?
Yeah.
Um, um, I think with the people who don't recognize, or don't, I would probably kind of massage the wording a little bit and maybe say that they don't recognize that they need help, they aren't ready to receive help, or they're
Mm,
afraid of what getting help might mean, right?
wow.
Um, um, and so, for the people who aren't ready, I mean, I think for any of them, just letting them know that it's available, right? Like letting them know, okay, you might not be ready for this, or this exists and this is a thing. When you're ready, these are some of the steps that you can take. Or when you're ready, or you can even say, you may know somebody who needs this, which they
I
probably do.
That is really good because you're saying I think you're the person that needs it, but
Well,
giving a little more
or
space.
yes, and the other thing is that it's so universal that sometimes
True.
people, they will recognize something that they need for somebody else before they will recognize it for themselves.
Mm.
Like, I mean, I'm sure, and I'm sure you've experienced that where somebody, it's kind of like they're projecting and they're just like, you really need blah, blah, blah. And you're like, I sure do. You're
No, those
right.
are three fingers that are pointing right back at you. Before we go too much further, I want to make sure I can do this. Beth McGorry just said, I purchased Denise's book. Yay,
Yay,
Beth.
Beth. Thank you,
That's so
Beth.
awesome.
Yay.
So the reason I asked about the people that don't want to grow is because you and I get to pick and choose the people that we work with to an extent. But there are leaders that are in teams, and there are some people that are needing work and not necessarily open to it. And so I know we had conversations earlier today with sometimes the humanness in relationship is inside the machine or the organization, the artificial structure of an organization. And so it's not necessarily, sometimes people have to leave. They're just not they're not doing the stuff that their job takes. But I was just wondering if there are other, like, what would you do when you're working with a leader who's then trying to bring it to a team, bring this banishing their inner critic to a team? Do you go into with them and do some teamwork exercises to create that, or are there certain things that they can do individually?
So one of the things I actually, again, fantastic question. I just finished creating a course for LinkedIn Learning, filming it just at the beginning of last month of February, and it's called. It's about creativity for developing a creative mindset for leaders. And one of the things that I talk about in that is that kind of doing it for yourself so that you can then be able to do it for your teams, do it within your teams and for your teams. And so I would say kind of the same thing for leaders who, and it kind of can work both ways. If they're hesitant or if they're like, I don't need to banish an inner critic. But, I see people on my team who need to, then bringing the work in and making it available for the teams will make it so that they can see, they can start to recognize, where like, that actually sounds familiar. I didn't even know. Like I've had people write me after I've done keynotes and everything and say, I didn't even know that had a name. I just felt like that all the time. I didn't even know imposter syndrome was a thing, or I didn't even know, being, highly self-critical was a problem until you outlined the reasons why and the disadvantages that it does, the roadblocks that it causes for you professionally when you have that. And so I think it's that kind of thing of again, giving people the tools, giving people the overview. And again, when you normalize it and you're like, look, this is normal. Like, again, I just started I finished it, but I taught a course for Stanford Continuing Studies program on Banish Your Inner Critic. And one of the things I said at the very beginning, I was like, look, if you're having this and you're kind of mid-level to kind of senior in your career, understand that this is completely normal. Like most people experience this imposter syndrome, inner critic, perfectionism, like all this stuff, experience this at this point because you are senior in your field and because you're at this high level, because the stakes get higher the higher you get, right?
And the covering gets less. You have less supervision and more risk. Yeah, the stakes are higher.
And you also have more expectations for yourself. You have more responsibility. You have, more of a habit of being self-critical, right? Like you've been on the planet longer. And so if you've never dealt with being self-critical when you're in your 20s, when you're in your 30s and 40s and 50s, it's just stronger. It's just a stronger habit. So, I mean, all these things. And so, again, I always love people's reaction and response when I say, this is normal. And you just see them like completely relaxed, like, oh, okay, good.
It's so much energy to try to cover up and keep people from seeing the fact that you don't know or you don't have it all figured out.
It is. It's exhausting. I mean, having
is.
experienced it myself on different levels and different ways and in different parts of my life, it's exhausting, right? When you can finally just be like, like one of the things that when I first started teaching classes, and I think I took like a little workshop on how to teach classes better when I first started teaching at Seattle Central Community College years and years ago. And one of the things that I heard in that workshop, and I've heard tons of other places, is one of the most powerful tools you have as an instructor, as a professor, as a teacher, is to be able to be comfortable with saying, I don't know. I don't have the answer to that question, but I'll go look it up and I'll find it out, or I'll figure it out for you, or like, let's figure it out together, or whatever.
Isn't that freeing?
But
I know as a presenter,
so
that
freeing.
was really, I thought I had failed if I didn't have the answer, but it just means I have smart audiences. And yeah.
And how can you have all the answers? Because you're not omniscient. You're not omnipotent. You don't know all the things. There's, more things that you don't know than you do know.
When you put it
because
that way.
There's a lot, because there's a lot going on. There's a lot happening in the world.
There is.
So,
Wow.
Yeah.
So how did you come into like embracing this as your message? Were there certain signposts along your journey for that?
There absolutely was. So there's a woman, I haven't looked into her work in years and years and years, but there's a woman whose name is Suzanne Evans, and she has a phrase that she helps, people become like thought leaders in their chosen, field. And one of her phrases is, let your mess be your message.
Whoa.
Word.
Yeah.
Right? And I remember like hearing that and being like, well, why am I doing CSS? Like training people on CSS. I mean, like, not, I was like, it's a support. And then for
everybody that's not sure what that is, that's cascading style sheets, right? It's tech.
Cascading style sheets, right? It's a
something on
programming language that goes with web design.
That was like for me, really, not for anybody else.
I used to be a web designer in a former life, and a former professional life in this lifetime. Anyway. And one of the things, though, that happened when I was writing my very first book, which was called the CSS Detective Guide, I was battling self-doubt and inner critic like every single day. It was like I'd wake up, the inner critic was at my dining room table with a coffee, like, good morning, here you go, let's get into it. And like every day for 9 months. I mean, it was, again, exhausting. And when I finished the book, and I finally had a moment when I was designing the website for it, and I finally had this moment of like an inner critic free moment where I got into this amazing flow state and everything. After I kind of came down from that, I was like, this is what I want to help people with, because this is what I've been struggling with my whole life. My whole entire life, of wondering if I'm creative enough, wondering if my creative work is any good, wondering if I can, am I going to just like tap into this thing and I'll never be able to tap into it before? Like, what are people going to say? Are people going to think I'm a fraud? Are people going to think I'm an imposter? And I was like, this is the thing. This is my mess. Let me have this be my message, basically.
Well, and I love that you coupled it with, or juxtaposed it with, being in flow. Like, the freedom that's there when you don't have that critic. Because I don't think I had thought of this recently. I'm sure when I've heard you speak, I've thought of it. But the idea that the critic isn't there when I'm in flow state. When I'm just... And literally on a neurological level, like on a neuroscience level, the part of your brain that is in charge, that basically is the inner critic, that's in charge of behavior modification, self-judgment, control, all these things, that part of your brain actually powers down and is like not active when you're in flow. Wow. Yeah, I know, right? And so it's kind of like you literally, there's like they actually are two opposite things. When your inner critic is present, you can't be in flow. And when you're in flow, it's because your inner critic isn't present. Boom. Wow. That is a
Right.
lot to think about. Everybody's like,
I
wait,
know.
what?
I think I need to have a piece of cornbread and think about that.
Yeah. Are there ways that you've seen people? It seems like we're not. It's not necessarily safe to meet in the pandemic and or meet in person. Um, although I guess Miami, a lot of people went there just to hang out.
Bless their hearts. And
Whatever.
you see people just out there just acting like there's no pandemic, and I'm just like, y'all need to simmer down.
It's not over yet.
You need to simmer
What
down.
are what is so has the have you the people you've worked with, have they seemed to have ramped up inner critic and stress and anxiety, or has it been sort of normal but just more aware and less distractions?
I I feel like last year, and especially when the pandemic started, I felt like, well, this is a perfect time for my message. And this is a perfect time for me to help people manage their anxiety
Hmm.
levels because people's anxiety levels were out the roof. Um, this is the roof. See, I'm getting a new roof.
See.
Woo, okay. Anyway, um, but the thing I think that's really interesting about the fact that we've literally been in this circus now for a year,
Yeah.
is that people have gotten used to the level of anxiety and the level of stress and all of these things has become normal, right? Like it's the now normal.
Oh, interesting.
And so, like one of the things I've read several articles as they've kind of come my way about um, kind of like what the pandemic has kind of done to our ability to focus and concentrate and everything.
Ooh.
Um, and yeah, are we over?
No, I'm
Oh, you're
oohing
like,
that.
ooh, you're
Like I
oohing me.
haven't thought
Okay.
about the
And
the
and
rewiring and the impact that that has to us. Wow.
right. And so I feel like I have been experiencing it today, or actually realize that like my ability to track things and kind of stay on top of things and to remember things is dramatically different
Hmm.
than it was before. Um, and I was like, well, I think I can attribute because I like to consider myself somebody with a pretty good memory, um, and like keeping on top of stuff, and things just like blow past me. I'm focused on the thing that's in front of me, and that's kind of all I can focus on. And then peripheral things that I used to be able to keep track of, I can't keep track of as well.
Hmm.
And from the articles I've read, that this is actually kind of normal, and this is part
Wow.
of the prolonged stress response that our brains are having been in a pandemic for as long as we are.
Wow. Well, that's
Mm.
going to be interesting as that impacts us too. Interesting.
Yeah, yeah. So in answer to your question, has the inner critic ramped up? I feel like at the beginning of the pandemic, definitely. It's probably ramped up and then just stayed at a high level, but now that high level is now what's considered normal to us because
Yeah.
that's what we've been working with for
So
a
we need to
year.
work even more. That is okay. So I was checking. It's denisejacobs.com is where people can find you.
That's right.
Where's the
That's
best
right.
place for them to go? Is it denisejacobs.com or?
DeniseJacobs.com. On Twitter, I'm Denise Jacobs. On Instagram, I'm Denise Jacobs. On LinkedIn, I'm Denise R. Jacobs. So any of those places are great places to contact me.
And you mentioned LinkedIn Learning. How do people find those courses that you've done there?
So, and you ask other more outstanding questions. I believe it's linkedin.com/learning. Um, uh, it's kind of sad that I actually don't know the URL offhand. But if you look up LinkedIn Learning, if you go to LinkedIn, if you go to the Learning tab, I believe you can go there. It's all the online courses. They got a huge library, and Banish Your Inner Critic and one of my other courses, Creative Collaboration, are both open and free to the public because they're part of a learning
Oh,
initiative launched by LinkedIn and Microsoft together last year, and they will be available until 2022.
oh my
So,
goodness. Well, take
yeah,
advantage of that now. That's great because
yeah.
apparently our brains are even more needing.
more
needing help.
Exactly.
Well, as we leave this, I want to honor your time. I know you got to get back to the roof.
Oh, I love talking to you. I actually was like, I could keep talking more. I want to honor other people's time because we could just be like, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, you and I could go for a long time. That was one of the challenges with doing on the hour, every hour with my favorite people is like, wait a minute.
It's not going to work. How about on the every 90 minutes?
Yeah, on the once a day, every day. I don't know how this will work. Marathon kind of conversation. Actually. If there were one thing, I mean, there's so many things that you've shared already that would help people just kind of normalize the inner critic and not normalize it, but normalize their experience of it. If there's one other thing you'd recommend people that are just kind of realizing that, oh, thank God I'm not alone in this. What would be, is there an exercise or something that you'd consider them suggesting to them to do?
There's a great exercise. How much time do we have?
We've got a couple more minutes.
2 minutes. All right. Here's the exercise. So this is an exercise to help you see the power of focus and attention and how you can shift your thinking from one set of thoughts to another set of thoughts. Ooh. You ready?
Yeah.
Okay. So what I want you to do, and anybody who's watching, to hold your hands up in front of your face like this, right. And then put all of your attention on one hand. So like when I say put your attention on it, like look at the shape of your fingers, look at the texture of your palm, the lines in your palm, the veins underneath, the skin, like all the details that you can pull in about that hand. And then while you're doing that, imagine that this hand is holding all of those inner critical thoughts, all of those self-doubt thoughts, all of that doubtful thinking that you have. Like, I don't know if I can do it. Am I doing enough? So-and-so, so many other people look like they're doing so much better than I am. Why can't I think during the pandemic, remember things? All of the self-critical thoughts. Now, I want you to slowly shift your attention from your first hand to your second hand. And now put all of your focus and attention on this hand. Look at all the details, your palm, the textures, everything. And then imagine that this hand is holding all of the positive, self-supportive thoughts that you would rather be thinking. Like, I don't have to know it all. I don't have to have all the answers. And how I feel is completely normal because there are other people who feel the same way. And I'm not alone in this, and I have support, and it's through doubt that I learn, right? And that I get better. And now, here's a question for you. Is your first hand still there? Oh, do you care about your first hand now that you're so focused on your second hand?
Wow.
So that is like a really powerful way. First of all, it's a tool that you can use anytime. Yeah. Anytime you find your thoughts kind of going off the rails, go, okay, I'm just going to hold my hands up and see how much power you have in shifting your focus from one place or one set of thoughts to a totally different and self-supporting set of thoughts.
Denise, thank you so much. And I was a little embarrassed that you read my brain when you were talking about the negative ones, all those self-critical thoughts. I didn't think that was fair. No, I think it was wonderful. It's like, oh, wait, she doesn't have a live feed into my thoughts. Okay.
How is she doing that?
Yeah, exactly. She's a Jedi mind trick or something. Right. Thank you so much for celebrating with me. Thank you for writing your book and just releasing your brilliance on the world.
No, and thank you for writing your book and releasing your brilliance out into the world. How much help are you going to do for leaders everywhere of all sorts to be able to normalize doubt and then use it as a tool to propel themselves forward? Like,
I was so honored by your endorsement. It was like takes up an entire page almost in the book. You just were so thoughtful and generous. So thank you for your kind words.
It's so true. I read this and I was like, I'm going to read this book again, like take my time with it and everything, because it's just such great, juicy, useful information.
Well, thank you so much.
I'm so proud.
Go to denisejacobs.com, get Banish Your Inner Critic, and also consider pre-ordering this one right here. Surprising Gift of Doubt. All the things.
Wait. This way.
Yeah.
There it is.
Thank
Boom,
you.
right there.
And thank you so much. I hope people will go that. And thanks for celebrating with us,
Thank you
with
for
Emily and
having
me.
me.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye
Bye.
bye.